In 2010, I had moved to a new house where I lived much closer to my family. I was going over to their house quite a bit due to my new proximity to them. One night, I went over to eat dinner and watch a movie with them. We were all about to watch our movie, and we had plates of food and everything was in order. I can't remember the title of the movie we were going to watch, but it was about science fiction or something, and the topic of alien conspiracies came up. We were speculating as to what could be behind that whole phenomenon. Was it aliens, or was it just humans with advanced technology, kept secret over the years in order to hide the tech from rival governments? Whatever it was, there had to be some answer. Too many people have seen these craft for the whole thing to be played off as tricks of the eye or weather balloons and swamp gas. We concluded that whatever was causing the phenomenon was probably real, and people like the CIA probably know something, at least, about it. Immediately after this was said, to all of our amazement, a brilliant blue, glowing orb, about the size of a golf ball, appeared in the middle of the room, about 6 feet off the ground. Everybody saw this and gasped. It appeared and disappeared within the span of about a second. When the orb disappeared, it flashed and expanded into nothingness, lighting up the room and leaving us all with an image burned into our eyes. You know when your eyes are exposed to an intense light, and you can still see the light several seconds after it's gone when you close your eyes? It was like that. I closed my eyes to see it again, and I could. I told my family to do the same, and they did, and they could see the remnants as well. We were all kind of like, what the f*** was that? I got up to look around because at first, I thought it was just an electrical spark or some kind of anomaly like that, explainable from maybe like a light bulb going out. I checked around for a burnt out light bulb, but there were none. We started to try and figure out what could have caused the flash, and even discussed how odd it was that it appeared a second or so after talking about aliens and the CIA. There really wasn't anything we could think of that would explain what we all saw, other than maybe ball lightning or something. My mother and I had an event where we witnessed ball lightning up close during a storm. We were house sitting for a family friend, and the storm caused the power to go out. So we just watched the lightning and the tree swaying around. We saw a light coming down from the sky about the size of a baseball, and it almost fluttered in its descent. This thing was a yellow color, and it came down in this wavy motion, and it was falling at less than freefall speed, before finally hitting a tree directly in front of the window we were looking through. It hit the tree and exploded, and the tree was decimated and burning. My mom and I talked about that event, and we both thought that this blue light was not ball lightning. But I still don't even know. Oddly enough, on another occasion, in 2013, I was again at my family's house for dinner and a movie. We were all eating and chatting when suddenly, the same blue orb appeared in front of all of us over the table. We all stood up and remembered having seen the exact same thing a few years back. It appeared and disappeared in the exact same manner it had in 2010, flash and all. Again, we looked around for burnt out light bulbs and could find none. All the bulbs were fine. I haven't seen it since, but when we have dinner together, I bring it up sometimes in hopes that it might appear again. It was kind of nice that we were all there to see it both times, because it's just one of those things where you'd be hard-pressed to find someone to believe your story if you didn't have more witnesses. This is a pretty interesting story, because not only did these people experience this as a family, but they experienced the same phenomena twice. Separated, of course, by a few years, but all together nonetheless, doing the same thing. Eating dinner, watching a movie. Who knows what variables helped bring forward this phenomenon, but it's pretty concurrent with several ball orb style UFO stories that I've read about. Could the ball UFO have had already been in the room before they were talking about those topics the first time? Or could it have been just some ball lightning or natural phenomenon that has yet to be explained? Very interesting nonetheless. An old coworker of mine told me this story that happened to him when he was a kid growing up in Honduras. We'll just call him Ed. Sometime in the late 70s in the northern part of the country, Ed and his sister were playing on an abandoned railroad track that was once used to bring mined materials from somewhere in the jungle directly into town where they lived. It was a popular place for the children to play because there were carts on the track still, and the kids would push themselves around in those. They had been on the tracks for the better part of the day. They never went any further than the edge of the jungle, which was much too dark and creepy for them to explore. They had gotten to around the part where they usually turn back, and the day was coming to an end. This was a good half-mile or so from the town. The point where they usually turned back had a bridge that allowed the tracks to cross a small river into the jungle, and above the bridge loomed a massive tree, similar to a willow. As they were standing on the bridge, Ed and his sister had decided to go back home. At that moment, they witnessed a bright blue light turn on deep under the water of the river. The light was gaining in brightness, and they could now tell it was rising out of the river. The blue light was coming up through the water in a straight plumb line, even though the river was moving, and this scared them. Finally, the light came up and continued to float in the air, going straight up. This thing made no sound. The object was producing a very soft but very blue light, which was coating the surrounding area in blue. They stood on the bridge, completely frozen, just watching this thing rise even higher now than the bridge they were on. As it ascended past their eye level, they could see that the light had a central shape of an orb, and it was about the same size of a basketball. This orb was now about 20 feet up in the air, and about 15 feet away from Ed and his sister, and it was beginning to enter the cover of the big willow-like tree that canopied the bridge. Once it was about 3/4 of the way up the tree, the orb stopped ascending for a short while. After watching the object for a bit, they noticed it continued to ascend again. This time, it only came out to just above the tops of the tree. After this, the witness says that the orb started to quickly expand at a very fast rate, like a glowing blue gaseous sphere that became translucent as it expanded, but also got brighter, if that makes any sense. He says that the expansion and brightness happened so fast it was like a big flash. When they went home, they told people about what they had seen at the railroad track, and came to find that several of the elders in the area had seen similar blue orbs by that bridge. Since that event, they decided to stop playing so far out onto the tracks. It's so cool to me to hear stories like this, especially when they come from outside of my own country. Central America is riddled with all kinds of paranormal stories, especially stories of UFOs. I thought it was pretty interesting the way they described the blue orb and how it disappeared in an expanding flash, similar to the way the first story described its disappearance. It's hard to say whether or not these things are intelligently designed or if they are just some sort of natural phenomenon. This next story is going to be pretty brief, and it's a different kind of light, but it lacks an explanation, so I'll add it here. About a year ago, my girlfriend and I were standing out on our back porch, smoking a cigarette. It was a pretty clear night, and we had great visibility of the stars and the Milky Way. We're both pretty interested in that sort of thing, so we continued to stay out there after smoking to enjoy the view. Our backyard had just gained a hill from bulldozing the area for a landscaping project we were working on. The hill was about 10 feet or so away from the back porch. Anyway, as we're standing there in the night, this light appeared at the base of the hill directly in front of us. It was about 6 feet tall or so and about 2 inches wide. It was slightly crooked and kinked and glowed gold. At first, I thought it was a light from inside or the neighbor's house hitting the hill, but I took a few steps from side to side to see its position in 3D space, and I realized that this thing was standing, and it was vertical. I was kind of laughing because I had no idea what it could be, and my girlfriend was just as confused as I was. I thought about walking up to touch it, but I couldn't bring myself to get close. It lingered there for about 30 seconds or so, before vanishing and leaving us in darkness again. Honestly, I had just thought it was a pretty cool experience, and I was kind of smiling about it. and I turned to my girlfriend, who was at a loss for words. She slowly started to become hysterical about the experience and started breathing really hard, and that scared me. I reassured her that everything was okay and we were going to be okay, but she had a pretty hard time calming down. Her reaction made me think about UFOs and aliens and the idea that the government hides such things to protect people from mass hysteria and not being able to cope. Which, I'll add, I always thought that was kind of a lame reason. But after seeing her on-set reaction, I really thought about it, and it kind of disappoints me to think that maybe humanity really isn't ready to learn about those things. I wasn't really afraid of it. I wasn't going to go near it, but it was definitely a strange experience. I wanted to include this story because it had very similar characteristics of the previous two, whereas it was a light and it disappeared quickly. Could it have been some sort of hologram or Project Bluebeam style device, or simply a trick of the eyes with some light in the darkness? Until we find out, I guess it's just one of many strange unknowns.